From the United States. Good afternoon, Jessie, and thank you for your time on the SABC News Desk.
Thank you very much.
It's Kirchner speaking. Yes, Jessie, I just want to garner your reaction, not only as a leader in the African National Congress, but as a woman and a mother from the continent of Africa right now.
Yes. Well, I think firstly, as a woman, Comrade Winnie Mandela was perhaps an example of bravery, courage, and the mental intellect to analyze every situation before making a statement. I admired her ability to explain situations that perhaps confuse other people. She immediately would understand that if we were not united, we would not be able to go forward. And this was long ago. This is nothing new for her. She was always ready to look at the situation from its political perspective, understood the South African political scene very, very well, understood in the 80s and in the 90s what we were up against, and she was fearless in the face of that, even though she was its most aimed at target by the regime at the time. She was really supremely persecuted by the apartheid regime in every way possible and stood against it. And as a mother, I must say that she gave everything. She gave her family to the ANC. She gave herself to the people of South Africa selflessly. She made sure that there was never... You know what really made many of us believe in activism was the following. Winnie didn't believe that any child should ever suffer. She was a social worker by profession and a social worker in her heart. When people's homes were flooded in Alex, Winnie was there. When people's homes burned down in informal settlements, Winnie was there. When people were arrested and detained, Winnie made sure that lawyers were made aware of it, and indeed stood by to assist. So, you know, I can't really say more than Duarte has said about her, except to say that we've lost our mother, basically. We've all lost our mother in the ANC, and that's who she was.
Jessie, can you just elaborate for us? I know it's difficult because we're really talking about a complex, multifaceted personality here. But in a nutshell, can you just elaborate for us on the intellectual heritage that Mama Winnie leaves us and the relevance of her life and times on the contemporary liberated South Africa we find ourselves in right now?
Yes. Well, Winnie was a strategist, in my view. She planned in many ways many different activities, even in the 80s, that would raise awareness about the plight of people in South Africa. And I must say that at the time, her interventions also opened the eyes of a number of people in the United States, amongst the Black Caucus, for example. Even though she was not able to move, she was not able to do much, and especially when she was in Brandfort. She started a clinic there, but more than that, a self-liberating space for people to make them understand that ultimately you're your own liberator. Anything you want, you have to do for yourself. Winnie was a great writer. I don't know how many people actually know that, but she wrote a great number of her own speeches and edited those that other people wrote very well. And so she leaves with us this thought of the emancipated woman in Africa, in South Africa, fearless to the end, putting together people to fight for your rights. I remember her views on female genital mutilation. She was very clear ahead of when anyone else discussed that matter. Winnie discussed it and wrote about it. And I guess people have already forgotten that she's done so, but she did that. On the emancipation of women, Winnie was clear that there was never going to be emancipation of women by men, but women had to do it for themselves. And she was critical of the side-by-side notion of, we fight side by side with our men. She said, no, we've got to fight. Fight for what you want. And if you leave men behind in doing that, so be it, but fight. And she wasn't a fighter with her chest, but she fought with her head. She thought things through, and she did what was necessary and what was right at the time, given the circumstances. So, you know, she didn't just emerge in 1976, as people say, but she was there throughout the period of the Defiance campaign and beyond that. And she wasn't just a support to Comrade Nelson Mandela. She was a political person in her own right and in her own space. And, you know, for many, I think that irritated people a great deal. But Winnie was forthright and spoke her mind. And, yes, it's difficult to put, you know, you're asking me to be a bit more specific. But I'm trying to say to you that as the days goes on, we will see this as people begin to talk more and more. But for many of us younger women, this was a woman we looked up to because of her absolute courage, fearlessness.
Jessie, if I can just come in there. In truth, Winnie Mandela's political and her sometimes personal life was littered with some controversies here and there, yet she still managed to triumph in our hearts. What do you put that resonance down to? Why has she become such an icon in the country and on the continent, despite the sometimes controversial nature of things?
Well, look at her beginnings. Winnie comes from the rural part of the Eastern Cape. It's unexpected in our country and everywhere where women who are born in patriarchal societal homes emerge as strongly as she did. But she did. And I think that made her extremely remarkable, where she actually battled patriarchy first and foremost, left her home, went on to study as a social worker, moved on from there, married Nelson Mandela, but not as a woman in those days who married a man and is his underling, but as an equal to a very enigmatic and charismatic person. She equally was charismatic and enigmatic, and when she spoke, people listened because she spoke about the issues of the ordinary person. Winnie understood what it is like to live in the rural areas, to live in a four-roomed house in Soweto. She never moved out of Soweto. Winnie understood what it was like to be a single parent for over 27 or 30 years at that, raised two children on her own, two remarkable women, both educated, and she herself never stopped educating herself. She read everything she could read. She understood world politics really well. She interacted with visitors from other parts of the world as an equal, not as Nelson Mandela's wife, but as a leader of the African National Congress. Winnie's legacy to us will be step forward, raise your hand, never look back, and be your own person. And I think what really made her different was she never succumbed to the degradation that apartheid put her under. She never succumbed to other degradation by people later on in her life. She didn't succumb to degradation. She stood up firmly and said, I am Winnie Mandela. This is who I am, and I am going to move forward. And I think that it's that kind of absolute, if she wasn't willing to ever give up, right up to the last minute, she never gave up that part of herself.
Jessie, Winnie Mandela did battle patriarchal attitudes in her day. It's a struggle that women in the country, we face every day, this deadly combination sometimes of poverty and patriarchy. What will you do as one of the few women leaders in the ruling African National Congress to help us advance the struggle for gender equality in the country right now?
Well, for me, my call is to every woman in this country. Never ever give in to patriarchy. It's almost like an impenetrable disease without a cure. But it is one of those that we must fight. We must continue to raise the plight of women, particularly the notion of women and our economy. Make sure that it is understood by everyone that women are half of this country. We're not lesser beings. We are exactly equal to every other human being that walks the earth. And we have fought for not just legal rights to be put in place, so we've got that. But what we need to do is to continuously make sure that even though we might respect values of our families and so on, we must never bow down to the patriarchal notion that women are of a lesser being than a man, and we have to walk 2 steps behind any man. We don't need to do that. So it's an activism that we need to inculcate. And one of the things that I personally think we have to do as a matter of urgency is for all women, irrespective of our political...
Thank you, Jessie. Thank you, Jessie. I'm afraid we'll have to leave it there. We are out of time. That was the African National Congress's Jessie Duarte joining us on the line from the United States. My colleague, Leanne Munnis, is standing by with more.
A very, very good